All right. Who's ready to build a billion-dollar company? Raise your hand. Let's go. 10 billion. All right. I like the ambition. Great. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This is super exciting. We're excited to kick off the Startup Launch Competition for 2024. Give you guys some quick background, and then we'll get right into the content for the first session. And we'll definitely have some time at the end for you guys to network, get to know each other, and also for any of the founders that already have ideas, you'll have the time to pitch too. So I'm Pablo Casilimas. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at OneSixOne Ventures. We're a local venture capital firm, actually the only local venture capital firm here in Gainesville. We've invested in 3 Gator-led companies. We've deployed about $2.5 million into 15 startups around the country so far. And the reason we come back every single fall is because we see a ton of opportunity here at University of Florida. Justis and I actually met when we were students and started hosting events to help build the ecosystem. When the pandemic happened, we launched an accelerator, helped 40 companies raise over $13 million. And at that point, we evolved into a fund, and now we're actually investing in companies. But UF is a great institution for talent, 60,000 students, 13,000 engineering students, and we've got some really bright minds in the room tonight, so excited to have you guys join us. And so to kick it off, we're going to go over some myths that a lot of early startup founders think to be true but are not. We're going to go over basics of ideation and how to know if you have a good idea. And then finally, we're going to go into MVPs and how you can build an MVP in a really short time span. So this is what we're going to be going over throughout the entire rest of the semester. Next week we'll go over launching, talking to users, KPIs, following week pricing, agreements, and how to maximize your productivity. We'll bring in some guest speakers, and then we'll be concluding with a demo day on December 10th. Now, keep in mind that there is going to be a big gap between week 6 and week 7. That's because there's Thanksgiving, and then the week after that, we're going to be in Miami for a big event in Art Basel. So those 2 weeks will definitely give time for virtual office hours over Zoom, and make sure that you guys are staying up to date and all that. So, cool. So we'll start off with the myths. So myth number 1 is people tend to think that the more money that you raise, the more, I'll click it myself. Yeah. The more money you raise from investors, the more likely you are to be successful. The reality is that the majority of companies end up failing. The majority of companies that raise money end up failing. And, just because an investor invests in a company does not increase the odds of success. Yes, money is important, but it's not everything. And there's actually, on the contrary, if you raise too much money early on, you will do things differently. And you'll do things in a way that you won't be able to scale, and you won't be able to build a startup. Because in the beginning, you have to do a lot with a little. That's the whole principle of building a startup. You're trying to take on incumbents. You're trying to take on these massive companies with tons of resources. And if you raise a ton of resources, you're going to try to take the same approach that they're taking, and you won't be able to compete with them. So I'll give you guys some examples. So Atrium was actually started by Justin Kan, who is a co-founder of Twitch. This guy has an incredible track record. Twitch sold to Amazon for $970 million. And then he's like, cool, I'll start my next startup. And of course, investors throw money at him like crazy because they're like, it's Justin Kan. This guy's already sold 2 companies. He's got a great track record. Ends up raising $75 million. They were building, it was legal tech, and they were trying to build basically the cheapest law firm using tech. And they just didn't have a real product. They were trying to scale before the product was actually ready. So it was kind of like a leaky bucket. They were getting a lot of users, but the users were dropping off, and they were canceling their contracts because the product was not super tight. So that's one example. Kibi, which was supposed to be like Netflix for very short videos. How many of you guys heard about this company? Okay, just 2. I never really heard about it that much, but they raised $1.75 billion, and it was actually started by the former CEO of eBay. So it was and they had all these big investors on board. They raised all this money. They're like, oh yeah, Netflix is huge. People are going to love short form content because their attention spans are getting smaller. And they raised too much money early on, and they try to do things differently instead of listening to their users and scaling bit by bit. And then the last one is Juicero, which is just silly. You guys should look up videos about this company. They were just trying to build I guess it's supposed to be like the best juicer in the world. And like, they raised $120 million for a juicer, and like, it was just silly. They had all these commercials and stuff, and people were just not buying it that much. And the people who bought it didn't have great reviews about it. And so, yeah, they ended up, going under. So myth number 2, we see this a lot, especially with first-time founders, is they want to be very secretive about their idea and what they're building. And the reality is you can put your idea on a billboard in New York and it doesn't even matter. And the reason is because building a startup is not about the idea, it's all about the execution. And most people are not willing to go through what it takes to actually build a startup. And I mean, I'm talking about like years of like dedicating your entire life, plus like the suffering and the rejection and the failure and like the constant iteration and improving. So the idea really doesn't mean that much. So you don't want to be too guarded about it. Now, I'm not saying go to your competitor's office and just tell them all your secrets. But at the same time, in this classroom, on campus, like when you're talking to people, you want to try to communicate what you're building to as many people as possible, because that's the only way you're going to be able to refine your pitch and continue to, get feedback, versus just keeping it a secret, for years and then never really getting anywhere. So myth number 3, and this is like one of the most critical ones. It's, the more time that you spend planning and strategizing, the more likely you'll be to succeed. The reality is you could spend the next 30 years writing the best, business case or plan and studying a problem, and then go launch and you're gonna get punched in the face. It's like Mike Tyson's quote, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the reality is everybody has an idea until they go to market. And then the market punches them in the face, and people don't really want to pay you money for it, and then you have to learn from the market and continue to improve. So you want to reframe that from, instead of like trying to come up with the perfect idea to build, you want to try to build this product with your users instead of trying to build it for them. So you want to launch as quickly as possible, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Myth number 4, the bigger your team, the more likely you are to succeed. So I think if you just have one founder, that makes it very difficult if you're a solo founder. But if you have 2 or 3, that is usually the sweet spot for starting a startup. And the reason is just typically there's complementary skill sets. It's very rare that you have one person who has really great communication skills and then is also a really great developer and can build great products. There are people who have that, but it's not very common. So usually teams of 2 or 3 are ideal. Usually like 4 or more than 4 for sure is like not great, because it's just too many cooks in the kitchen. And there can be differences in opinion and perspective and vision, and then arguments, co-founder fights, people taking sides. And again, this is like, the way to think about it, building a startup is like you're in a pressure cooker. And if you've got 10 people in there, you're all going to want to kill each other. Or there's going to be certain people that you're going to want to kill. But if you have like 2 or 3, then you have like common vision. And like, yes, there's going to be arguments and difference in opinion, but you can talk about it and figure it out. Versus when you have too many people, it can lead to more problems. So number 5, most startups fail due to lack of funding. And the reality is actually that top 3 reasons that most startups fail are because they don't make something that people want, meaning nobody actually pays you money for it or is willing to pay you money for it. Number 2, the timing. Timing is actually like one of the most important parts. And the thing about timing is you can't really control it and you can't really predict it as much. So this is why it's so important in the early days to think about longevity and like, how can you be as resourceful as possible, do as much with as little as possible, because you need to last for a long time, because you may be too early. And a lot of the best startups are a little bit too early, but they survive long enough to be able to capture that next wave of innovation. So when you think about like Facebook as an example, like they launched in 2004 when the internet was rising, but mobile really accelerated them to a whole nother level. And mobile, like smartphones, were still 3 years away when Mark Zuckerberg first launched Facebook. So you want to be able to survive and be able to jump on that wave and grow. And then the last one is co-founder breakups, which is a very real thing. And when we're investing in companies, we want to see some type of history with the co-founders. Like, did they just meet at a networking event last week? Or have they known each other for like years and maybe they've worked on other products together? Because if not, when things get tough, what's going to keep you there? If you don't know the person super well, you're just like, I'm out, Whereas if it's like your best friend, you don't want to let them down and you're going to want to stick it through. Number 6, you should delegate and outsource the most difficult tasks. We've seen this in the past, particularly from people who have access to a lot of money or just like maybe they're able to raise capital pretty easily. They just want to hire people to do everything, like pay for marketing, pay for some shop in India to build a product, pay for this. And ultimately the truth is you want the founding team to be doing everything in the early days. And there's reasons for that. Well, for one, like the whole premise of building a startup is that you're constantly learning from your customer. You're constantly learning from the market and you're adapting. And if you're outsourcing all of these tasks, you're not learning anything and you can't keep iterating and keep adapting. So you want to be doing everything in the early days. There are some things that as you start to scale, you can outsource. And there are some tasks that maybe like you could outsource even early on, but like, it can't be anything related to like interactions with your customers. You need to be the one creating the product. You need to be the one talking to your customers, selling to customers. All those things you cannot outsource. Number 7, you need to wait until you have a product to launch your company. So the reality is you can build an MVP in 30 minutes. And we're going to go over some examples that have literally built multi-billion-dollar companies, and the first version of their product, they launched it in 30 minutes. And you can do that too, especially now. There's way more tools available, way more software, no-code solutions, apps that you can use to be able to come up with a MVP. So you want to launch as fast as possible. Number 8, you can work on your business part-time or have multiple startups. So Elon Musk is, I think, people look at Elon Musk and they're like, oh, cool. Like he has like 5 companies and he's crushing it and they're all like game-changing companies. But he wasn't doing that when he just started. When Elon Musk first started, he was literally sleeping on the floor of an office, had no apartment because he had no money to pay an apartment. He was all in on building one company, right? And then that one company got acquired for millions of dollars. And then he started his next company. And then that one got acquired. And then he said, okay, I want to build this company and then this company. And then he started multiple companies, right? But he's leveraging his time because he has access to so many high quality people and he has access to so much capital because of his track record and what he's done. But it took him a long time to get there. He didn't just go in right off the bat and start 5 startups. That would have never worked. So you need to be all in, and you won't have time for much else if you're really going to build a successful startup. And then the final one is, who's heard of this before? Build it and they will come. Raise your hand. Okay, a few people. Yeah, so it's just this like, I don't know if it's a running joke or if I don't know where it came from, but it's just this concept that like you launch a product and then all of a sudden like you're going to get tons of users, and it's the furthest thing from the truth. The reality is that you need to be super intentional about user or customer acquisition. You need to have some type of go-to-market strategy. Now, I'm not saying that you should spend 6 weeks or like a couple months just thinking about what is the best strategy to go to market. But like you need to have some type of plan and you need to be working on that very diligently to get those first few users. And ideally, and we're going to talk more about user acquisition next week, but ideally you want to be talking to the people that really, really need it the most. So we're going to go into ideation now. And it kind of ties into the myths a little bit because I think the largest myth of all startups for people who are not exposed at all is that you just wake up in the middle of the night one day and you have this aha moment and then you have this killer idea and it becomes a multi-billion-dollar company. And it's the furthest thing from the truth. So, what does it really look like? So if you come up with an idea and you think like this is the most brilliant thing and you just pursue it, you're going to end up like those startups that we saw in the one of the first slides, like Juicero or Kiwi or whatever. They just had these ideas and they're like, everybody needs this, like it's a brilliant idea. and they're going to put all this money behind it and work hard to get it out there, but at the end of the day, they weren't willing to adapt and iterate and learn from their customers. So the reality of a startup journey is you need to have a product feedback iteration loop. And I'm talking about, you want to get this as short as possible. So I put 1 week there, but like, if you can get that to like 2 or 3 days, even better, right? And what I mean by this is you should be talking to your users as often as possible and learning from them, like trying to interview them and learn about the problem that you're trying to solve for them. And based on what you're learning, you should be integrating that into your product. And then you should be going back to them and saying like, hey, like, I would love your feedback. Like, can you test this out? Like, what do you think? Does this solve your problem? And like, trying to understand, you know, and more importantly, looking at the actual data. So you want to be tracking how much are they using your product, not just like, what are they telling you? Because some people just want to be nice and they're like, this is a great idea. Like, I love your app. Like, this is nice. And then when it comes down to it, like, how much time are they spending on it? You know, like, are they using it 10 hours a week? Or did they go on it once and then they never opened it again? So you have to track this stuff because people will say one thing, but they'll do another. And their behavior speaks louder than their words. So again, when I say talk to users, that encompasses looking at the data and those user interviews, and then iterating back and putting that back into your product roadmap or, you know, launching a new feature, whatever it is. And I'll tell you, like, we have been meeting founders all over the country. We've met, you know, Stanford dropouts. Even recently, we had a call with these 2 Stanford dropouts, and they got into Y Combinator, and like, you know, we brought some people to help vet this company, and like, these guys, like, there was like one thing about their product that was like pretty unique. But the other things was not as interesting to like the people that we brought in to vet. And they were like asking good questions. They were like, oh, so like what would this be useful for you? Is this a problem that you have? How do you do this? And they're like, oh yeah, if it could do this, like that'd be super valuable. Like we'd pay a lot of money for that. And they're like, cool, like we're pushing code every night. We're gonna have that out in like 2 weeks. You know, like that's how quickly you wanna be moving. You wanna learn and then get straight to it. And this is what a real startup journey looks like. You focus on a problem and then you really have no idea where it's going to take you. And I'll say this a lot throughout the fall, but every startup, when you're building a startup, everything is more expensive than it seems, takes longer than you think it will, and nothing ever goes according to plan. It's just a reality. So you have to be prepared for that. And again, if you're fixated on the idea, you're not going to adapt. If you're fixated on the problem, your idea will adapt to the problem and the market. If you're fixated on the idea, you'll end up with a solution in search of a problem, which is what we talked about earlier. Just another example, but this is kind of like a mental exercise that all of you guys can do when you're thinking about building your startups or when you're thinking about the ideas. You want to think about how intense is the problem that you're trying to solve and how frequent the problem is. So where would you guys rank if I said like Uber, for example? Like where would you guys rank that on this chart? Somebody want to like raise their hand and like point?
I would say more towards the middle of both for Uber.
Middle of both? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. I might even say probably even more frequent for a lot of people. Depends on like how often you commute, and if you have your own car, then probably not a big problem. But yeah, you know, getting from point A to point B is a very real problem for some people, and it's a very frequent thing because people have to go to the office every day, or go to work, or go have meetings, or whatever it is, get to the club. So yeah, and then you know, there's things like a medical device, for example, which maybe is very specific solution for like a very large problem, right? So that might be like very high on the intensity, but not as frequent. But this is just a very good framework for thinking about what you're trying to build and if there's really a market opportunity there. Another thing that you should be thinking about, and I got this from, there's a really good book called, I think it's called The Startup of You. And I believe Reid Hoffman is one of the authors. He was the founder of LinkedIn. So he says there's 3 things that you want to find the intersection of. And one of them is, what are you great at? What Oh, this is a different one. Well, this is still kind of tying into the other thing, but you want to be thinking about also like, what are you great at? What can you realistically solve? And number 3, like, what are you uniquely qualified for, right? So, for example, like, let's just say like you want to build a solution to help cancer patients, and there's nobody in your family, none of your friends have ever had cancer. Like, there's not a lot of founder market fit there. So you really want to have a high degree of founder market fit, and that's the ability to fix. And then the other 2 are the ones that we were just talking about, which is the frequency and the intensity. So keep that in mind. And founder market fit is one of the key criteria that we look for when we're investing in startups. Here's an example of a good one. And this is our first investment that we ever made from our fund. It's a company called EaseAlert, and it was started by a UF alum. And so what EaseAlert does is they created a pre-alert wearable device that gives a gentle vibration 1 to 2 minutes before the alarm goes off at the fire stations. Now, they're trying to work with all first responders, but they're starting with firefighters. And the problem that they're solving is that the leading cause of death in the line of duty for firefighters is actually a heart attack. And they're actually 14 times more likely to have a heart attack during the dispatch alarm response, which is like a crazy statistic. This alarm has not evolved in hundreds of years. It's a loud bell. And when you think about the shifts that these workers have to do, they're there for 24 hours, which means that they're sleeping on shift sometimes. And sometimes they're relaxed, and sometimes they're in the shower or whatever, like, and all of a sudden you get startled. You have this loud bell. It happens on average 12 times per shift. Now think about the consequences of that. 12 times per shift for weeks, months, years, decades. That can be pretty severe. So their solution is pretty simple, and it just, instead of your heart rate going from 60 beats per minute to 120, it can go from 60 to 80 to 100, and it gives you more time to get to your emergency location on time. So pretty simple. But when we first met Blake Richardson, the CEO, and he wanted to go, we had an accelerator program. He was applying. One of the questions on the application was, why are you building this? Like, what makes you uniquely qualified? And he said, my father's been in the fire service for over a decade. And I would see him come home stressed all the time. And one time, one of our family friends, who was also a firefighter, had a heart attack. And that made me really worried. So I started looking into this, and I found the numbers were staggering about how many heart attacks were happening to first responders on duty. And that's why he started EaseAlert, right? Like, that's a high degree of founder market fit. He's solving a problem for somebody that's directly like related to him. And then the other one I'll give is a company called Rise Superfoods, which they also went through our accelerator. And it was a pretty interesting one because at the time, they were starting this little mushroom coffee company. And when Justis met the founder, and I was like, oh, like, it's mushroom coffee. Like, we're trying to look for like tech companies, like. And then we had a call with this guy, and we were just blown away. We were like, we have to accept this guy into our accelerator. He's a brilliant operator. And the story goes that he graduated from Harvard, worked at Maxwell House Coffee for 2 years as a brand manager, and he pitched them after 2 years. Hey, we should launch a mushroom coffee line. Consumers are looking for healthier options, lower caffeine, superfood, whatever. And they're like, no, this is going to cannibalize our own sales. We're not going to do this. So he literally quit his job, cashed out his 401k, and he moved to his parents' basement and started this company. And at the time, he was already selling $2,000 a week worth of mushroom coffee. That was when he joined our accelerator. We're like, this is really impressive. And last month, they did over 25 million in revenue. So, and all of you guys have probably gotten ads. If not, you will now, probably. But it was a good founder market fit. He worked in the industry for a couple years, saw something unique, and went after it. And then you want to ask yourself, is this a problem worth solving? Is it a growing problem? And this is really a market question. So is the market going to be 10 times larger in 10 years? Or is it a shrinking market? And then are you just competing for scraps, right, versus the incumbents? So that's a really key one. And oftentimes the most successful startups are creating their own markets. And so these are often very, very small to start, but they're growing very rapidly. And good examples of this are like Airbnb or Facebook or even eBay when they first launched. Like, any of these companies, they were creating a whole new market that wasn't available before. And then, is this an urgent problem and need a solution? And this is like a timing question. So is there somebody right now that is like suffering so much that they will literally pay you money for a solution, even if it's not a great solution? That's like a really important test. Like if the solution is not great and they're willing to pay you for it, then you know you're onto something. So that's really key. This will go into more as we talk about pitch decks later on in the semester, but it's just basically your TAM, SAM, SOM is your total addressable market, your serviceable obtainable market, and then your serviceable available market. And this is a way of narrowing down where you want to focus and how you're going to enter the market. So, for example, if we think about like Uber's TAM when they were first starting out, it's like, well, everybody in the world who needs to get from point A to point B and doesn't currently have a vehicle. But that wasn't who they were starting with. When they were starting, it was just a black car service in San Francisco. And so their SOM was, anybody in San Francisco who's trying to get from point A to point B and wants a nicer experience in a taxi. So 9 out of 10 startups fail. I would say probably the number's higher than that. And so the question people often ask themselves is like, why should I start a startup? Like maybe you guys are thinking like, should I really do this? Like, should I be trying to do this? Like, such a high failure rate. So why do people do it? Well, you can make a lot of money if you land on the right opportunity, if you execute properly, and if you build something that solves a really big problem. And so there's a lot of examples of college students that have built startups that went on to become very, very successful. Dropbox is one of them. Drew, I believe, was a student at Yale, and then he dropped out to start this company. DoorDash, which is what was, an example I was referring to earlier, that they built the first MVP in 30 minutes. And now it's worth $61 billion, started by 4 Stanford students. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, Facebook, Larry and Sergey from Google. And even locally here in Gainesville, there's some very notable startups that have been started by students. Feather's one of those. And I haven't heard the numbers recently, but I would estimate that this company is now worth close to, if not over $100 million right now. And Aiden started it when he was a student, and he literally dropped out of college to start this company. And he's a great case study because he had to pivot so many times. But the thing about Aiden is he was focused on the customer. He wasn't focused on the idea. So his idea changed, like literally, I'm not exaggerating, I think it was 5 times. And he'll talk about it. But yeah, they're still local and they're crushing it. They're doing millions in revenue and have scaled significantly. And then Fracture's another one. These two started when they were students at UF, trying to figure out a way to print on glass. And they have now delivered hundreds of thousands, and I believe there might even be in the millions now, of fractures that have been delivered. They have a big operation up at San Francisco Tech City. But again, they were just students when they were starting out right here in Gainesville.
Cool, what's up guys? How you doing? I'm Justis, by the way. I'm Pablo's better half. So what I'm going to go through is a little bit more on the MVP side, like how to launch, how to iterate. We'll get into questions. We'll have whoever does have a company, they'll get an opportunity to pitch, and then we'll try and form some teams. But we want it to be interactive and fun too. So like the back half will be like more conversational, and we'll make it fun for you guys. So like Pablo said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. There's actually one of my pictures. I have it on my wall in my bedroom. I'm just joking. No, I don't. But so like he said, everybody has this big idea. I was talking to a founder, and we met him in Vegas, actually, Consumer Electronics Show 10 years ago. And he was like, I have this really big plan, and I think everybody wants it, and I know that it's a real idea and a vision. We caught up 10 years later in New York City, and we were on a rooftop talking, and he was like, man, I'm finally about to launch it. And I'm like, what the? For 10 years, you've been working on this and making this big, solid plan. Obviously, nobody wants it. So what you have to do is that speed and iteration of going to market and launching, like they say, okay execution is better than the perfect plan. He came with the perfect plan, but at the end of the day, when he went to market, nobody wants it. It's 10 years later, still not one user, not $1. So you like want to iterate as fast as you can, and what you end up wanting to do is like coming up with a hypothesis. And I'll get into that for a second. So I don't want to, like I said, speed is everything. So I don't want you guys to come into this like making a really good plan. What we're going to do is go through the business model canvas. Have any of you guys already heard about this? So basically, instead of coming up with a 64-page business plan, this is something that you could do in 10 or 15 minutes to help you flush out your whole entire idea. Understand what's the problem, what are the alternatives that already exist? So like Uber, right? This would be what you would call your unconventional competition. For an Uber, you could, take a black car, but I mean, you could take a bus, you could walk. So like, what are the existing alternatives and how are people trying to solve that problem now? The cost structure, you just want to figure out like, how much is this going to cost me? So like cost structure for Uber would be like the driver's hourly rate. Cool, so yeah, that took what, like 15 minutes? Basically what we're trying to get at is speed is your biggest advantage. Large corporations, the only advantage that you'll have over them, they have the resources, they have all the talent, but the only thing that you'll have that you can differentiate with is the speed. If Google wants to launch something tomorrow, it's going to take the board, they're going to have to talk to the CEO, they're going to have to identify who in the org could build it and also do a feasibility study to make sure that it's not a bunch of waste of cash. So what you could do is launch an MVP, go to market tomorrow, and literally beat them to the race. So speed is the only advantage that you're going to have in this game. So what you're going to start with is your MVP unless you already come in with a product. So does anybody know what an MVP is? Perfect. You. Minimum viable product. So I think a lot of people have a misconception, and I'll break that down onto what an MVP is. But basically, your MVP is your hypothesis. So you're coming in, what is the least amount of product that I need to validate my idea? So again, the least amount of product that I need to do to validate my idea. It's a hypothesis. So basically what you're going to be running over the course of the next few weeks is an experiment. And think about your team as like a lab. Like you guys are literally trying to see, is this real? Is this viable? Is somebody going to pay for it? How fast can I build it? Can I go to market and get cash? So you don't know any of those answers until you go to market. So what you're going to want to do is, whether you have an idea tonight or if you come up with it tomorrow or you join another team, you're going to want to write out your hypothesis. So for an example, and I'll get into the MVP that I had a peer-to-peer parking startup. Actually, I'll go into that in a second. I'll explain the hypothesis and how I figured it out in a little bit. So what you're going to want to do is start super simple. These are examples of what an MVP could look like. It could be a landing page with a wait list. The most famous way that this has ever worked is Scale AI. I don't know if whoever in the room has heard of Scale AI, but they literally had a team of people and did not know what to build. They were like, okay, what do we build? How do we do it? Like, let's see if somebody wants what we're doing. And every day they would literally just pump out like 3 new landing pages. It'd be like, we could do XYZ, we could do this, we could do that. And then one day they were like, we could help internal tech teams scale their AI, train their models, and do all of these other things that sounded like really great. And literally all they had was a landing page with leave your email here. And overnight, they have tens of thousands of people that signed up on their wait list and started sharing it with their friends. And they're like, holy shit, we should follow this. And that's how they literally found out what to build next with Scale AI, was literally just building a landing page with a wait list. So, I mean, that could be like, hey, this is how I validate it tomorrow. I mean, it's kind of like janky, but still you could do it. Another one is Facebook groups, which something that I really like because it's like a no-code solution. Facebook groups, like I think is like underutilized. Kickstarters, we had a company that they had to build a physical product. This is more, I would say, for like physical stuff. They, how am I going to, in a few weeks, prove that a lot of people want this product? How am I going to do sales? And you could do all of that at the same time by launching something like on Kickstarter. You can come up with like a design, you could launch it, you can go say, I want to raise $20,000, and tomorrow you could literally get $20,000 worth of pre-purchases and all of a sudden get some cash, get some revenue, and then figure out how you're going to build it later. And then the last is wireframes and a prototype. I think a lot of people try and build like an entire product, and next thing you know, they're 6 months down the road, they built their product, they go to market, and they figure out that nobody wants it. So what are not MVPs? Surveys. A lot of times you'll meet professors or meet somebody else that'll tell you like, go out there. When I was here too, they were like, go out there and get like 500 surveys and then you'll learn from your customers. But there was a really big disconnect, because at the end of the day, surveys are not real. Like I filled out 500 surveys all around campus, and 400 people said they'd pay for my product. Then when I went to market, not one person paid for it. So it was like there was a really big disconnect with like actually getting cash and then getting this like useful information from leading questions where I'm like, hey, do you like me? And they're like, yeah, I like you. Because you're asking like friends and family and like people in person. Like at the end of the day, what about a complete stranger? Will they pay you? Yes or no? So a fully working app, that is not an MVP. If it takes longer than a month, you took too long. Like basically, if you don't come in with the product today, like we want you to try and be thinking about like next week, how can you get something ready? Like how can we go to market tomorrow? And I'll show you exactly how we do that, like how I did it through Facebook groups. So here's a few steps to the MVP. You want to write out a clear hypothesis. You want to build an MVP to test that hypothesis, and then you want to go to market with users. Literally, try and get them on there, try and do a transaction, try and have them do whatever you're trying to accomplish. Track it, measure it, learn from those customers, and then reiterate through that whole entire cycle. So it's called build, measure, learn. And you want to create like a constant loop of building, measuring what they're saying, learning from those insights, then rebuilding it, remeasuring it, relearning, and then constantly doing that iteration feedback and making it tighter and tighter. And what you're going to want to do is through you guys heard of Y Combinator, right? So the number one thing that you'll learn in Y Combinator is they literally just say like, talk to your customers. Like all the time while you're building this, you have to launch and talk to your customers. When I launched my first app, I literally called every single person in the database that signed up and called them one-on-one. It was just like, hey, I'm the founder. Like, here's my personal cell phone number. If you have a problem, call me. Let's work together. I want to see exactly what you need. And I would also give people the app and just be like, play with it. And then I wanted to see like if they had a problem with the booking. Like you think because you built all the wireframes and you build out your product, you think that everybody knows how it works. But until you give it and put it in somebody's hands without any explanation, you'd be surprised how often like people don't know how to pay, people don't know where to put in the credit card, people don't know like how to share it with a friend. So like you want these unbiased information from random people who are your customers, and you have to be continuously having those customer conversations. And in a later week, we'll go over like how to really conduct those interviews. So here was the hypothesis that I had. So there's a need, everybody seen this on game days, people were out there with a sign like, hey, rent my driveway. So the hypothesis was that people need to rent unused driveway space, and that people are willing to sell their driveways, right? I mean, there's been a million of these apps, right? Like it sounds like very logical. So basically I need people, what is my goal? Validate the hypothesis by getting people to list their driveways and then see if people will rent it out. You know, so I didn't even want to do the transaction, because then that would make me have to launch the app, get a whole entire website, and that might take a lot of time and developers and everything else. So what I literally did, and you guys can look it up right now, I launched a Facebook group called UF Gainesville Parking. This is still alive right now, and I just checked it last week, and there was like 10 posts like in the past week. It's like hilarious. This is like forever going to be up there. And it's not 142 members. I think it's like 200, 300. But it just showed, like, I was like, hey, if you want to post your driveway, post the exact address, the price, the available time slots, and if you're looking for a space, just contact them directly. I just wanted to see if people were willing to post their driveways and if people were willing to reach out to them directly and see and validate, like, is there a real business there? And what I posted, what I found out was everybody who was posting was just people looking for driveway space. Is anybody leasing a spot? Is anyone selling a spot? Is anyone selling a spot? And I realized, because the surveys, everybody was like, I'll list my driveway. Everybody said that. But when I started to launch the MVP, I realized nobody wanted to list their driveways and everybody wanted to rent. So it was the demand, it was the supply side that was the hardest part about figuring out this business. So within like 24 hours, you can see, okay, what is gonna be my real problems launching this company? It's gonna be the supply side. I don't need to focus on the drivers. The drivers really need this like really bad. What you're gonna need to do is focus on the homeowners and the renters and see how can I get them to list their space. And that was something that I learned once I did this exercise. Here's another one that was real. So I was working with a company out of New York, and basically their whole entire premise is like pay rent, get rewards, right? Like a majority of your income goes towards rent and you get nothing from it, just like a credit card, you know, you would like to pay and then get cash back and get a bunch of rewards, airline miles, stuff like that. So the hypothesis, number one, people are willing to share rent payment history in exchange for a reward. Number two, that reward can be worth $2 to $3. And then number three, people are willing to spend that $2 to $3 in a marketplace. Because if you really think about it, $2 to $3 in a marketplace is actually worth less than $2 to $3 because, I mean, you could buy a product for 30 cents, 40 cents. So the goal of the MVP was literally to get people to share their screenshots of rent payments in exchange for an Amazon gift card. That solves for all three of those points of the hypothesis. The company I was working with spent over a year and $1 million trying to build the whole entire product out, trying to hire all these developers, trying to hire C-class executives, trying to do all this. I got so frustrated, I literally launched a Facebook page. Another one. I'm telling you, you could do this tomorrow. I love Facebook pages. So I literally launched a Facebook page, and within 24 hours, I had 100 people on there, and I got 10 people to literally show me screenshots, who they were paying, what was their landlord's name. They would personally send me their address, and then they would post their Gmail or their Venmo, and I would send them money. So it was like without $1 million and without a whole year, right? With about $30 in 24 hours, I was able to prove like this is a viable business. Now that business went on to just raise their Series A $25 million raise. So it was like, how can you build as fast as possible, and how can you learn insights that's gonna help you build the future of your product? So it was like, I'm a really big like fan of Facebook groups. Okay, cool. So now let's get into questions. I want like personal questions. Is there any material that you had or questions from the material that me or Pablo went over?
I have questions about MVP. I have questions about the MVP for physical products. So I hear you're talking a lot about software-wise, but physical it's a little harder.
Yeah, perfect. So he asked, what about an MVP for physical products? So I gave a great example on Kickstarter. Like I think just trying to get pre-sales is the best way to prove that there's validation for what you're building before you actually have to build it. Because you know there's a bigger lead time for building a physical product. But if you can get 5 people to be like, hey, I'll pay you $20 for it once you build it, like that just proves that there's some type of need there. And it's been proven that people are willing to wait for something that they really need. So if it's like this, like nobody really needs that, they're just gonna go on Amazon. But if it's a way better version of this, they're willing to wait 2 to 3 weeks. They're willing to wait a month. On Kickstarter, some people wait 6 months. Anybody else?
So when you're iterating, right, and you're outsourcing all of your hard tasks like other people, why is it hard to iterate from there? I feel like you're there every step along the way. Because I know it's hard to iterate if you're outsourcing everything. So I was just like curious why.
Why is it hard to iterate if you're outsourcing?
Yeah, like outsourcing all the hard tasks of your business.
Yeah, so at the beginning, you're gonna have to, like they say, take out the trash. Like at the beginning, you need to be the closest one to the problem. And at the end of the day, outsourcing a lot of that is gonna increase that loop. Like I said, you wanna have that build, measure, learn cycle as tight as possible, and that's gonna happen with the people that are actually building the product and working on the business. But if you're like outsourcing a lot of it, you're gonna have this big knowledge gap to what is the source of truth and what you're really trying to accomplish. So you wanna get as close to the source of truth as possible.
For things like, I know you were saying about physical product, but let's say you're going towards like the app basis. How would you start with going to that MVP?
Okay, MVP for an app. So I mean, both of those examples that I just gave were both apps. And that was just like a Facebook group. So like, find your hypothesis, like so what are you working on?
I haven't started anything, but I do
Okay, cool. Yeah, so what you want to do is just write out your hypothesis, figure out what is the actual problem I'm trying to solve and what do I think is true, and then measure against that. Like, is this true? If I talk to 10 people and nobody like thinks that what I think is true, then maybe I'm wrong. So you just like want to be able to do that. And there's a lot of ways that you could start to get to market without actually having the full-fledged app. Because what you don't want to, you just want to dip your toe in. You don't want to go all in on building some app. Next thing you know, you're 10 grand down the hole, and you know. So and then find people who can code if you can't code, by the way. I think, wait, you guys have the question? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we talked a lot about having, not outsourcing, essentially. So you have a lot of experience in actual app development. So I have a question for you that may be more specific, not targeted towards MVP, but in terms of data storage on cloud and computational storage, do you outsource that, or do you have a better solution?
I would try and find somebody that you can bring in internally to run that for you. So are you guys developing something right now? Do you guys have internal devs or outsource? What'd you say?
We're just us.
Oh, you're developing it yourself. Yeah. So actually, I brought on a bunch of people. I was more of like the brains and sales and organizational piece, and I would bring in a lot of devs. So if that helps answer your question, I would just try and build the team out. Figure out what you need the most, and then try and solve for that.
Then I have a separate question. Do you think it is better to cater a product to create less of the product for like a richer client, or to do like a product that is cheaper, more available to more clients? Does this make sense? Like like having a solution for a very specific set of people for a very expensive price, or having a solution for a lot of people with a significantly lower price?
It's tough. I mean, it depends on what kind of business you're getting into. So his question was, because those are the only two options. And what it comes down to is like, can they self-service? So it's either high volume, low price, right? Like Walmart, right? Like anybody can come in there $3 and they'll walk out with the product. Or it's like Louis Vuitton. Is it like an expensive price point but a small amount of people? Now, how you can figure out which one you need to do first is like, can you have people service themselves? Because if you have a product that's really cheap but a lot of people, and you have to actively hire salespeople and you actively have to onboard them, the cost is going to be so high to get people to actually onboard and use the product in marketing and sales that your margin is completely destroyed. So if it's a technical thing that you're building and you have to get a lot of people and you're like you have to hold their hand, like you should definitely just charge a lot and go with less people. Because if not, you're gonna be like dead in the water.
If it's a service, how many users do you think is fair to ask for feedback before you charge for the service? Like to validate the hypothesis of the
Okay, it's a loaded question. So she was asking how many people should you have using it before you ask for money? So again, it depends. I mean, you could have a freemium model that's like, hey, try it for the first 30 days. I wouldn't do more than 30 days, to be honest with you, unless it's a really big contract. So we've had companies that are like, hey, I'll give it to you for free for 3 months. But like after 30 days, they should know if they want this product or not. And if it's like a single use product, like after 1 or 2 uses. Like you definitely don't want to be giving it away like a bunch for free. If they don't know if in 30 days or 15 days that they want to convert to a paid customer, then it's probably like not a good fit. We had a founder who came to us and he was like, I have 3,000 people that signed up and blah, blah. We talked like 6 months later and he's like, nobody converted to paid, but they're gonna. And I was just like, all right, I don't know. It's just like, it's a cool thing to have, so they're willing to sign up for free. But until you ask them for money, you'll really figure out if your product has legs or not. So like you have to kick them out of the nest. Be like, are you willing to pay, yes or no? And if not, kill them. Not like that. But
This isn't really related to like MVP, but if you want to start marketing through referrals, how would you say you like approach a client with that? How would you structure that?
Like an existing client.
an existing client,
How do we approach an existing client and ask them to give us referrals?
yeah, so usually it's through affiliate marketing. right? So like, hey, you're a customer of mine and you really like my product. And you'll see like a lot of people online that are using this approach. Like think about TikTok Shop. That is genius for affiliate marketing. So it's like, hey, I have this cologne, and then you buy one of the colognes and you start spraying it on yourself and you're like, hey, buy it from my shop. When somebody buys it from their shop, they get 10% of the transaction. So like people get incentivized for very few reasons, and one of them is cash. So either you have the world's best product like Facebook, where people are just like, dude, you have to get on this thing, like please, like this is the future. Or you need to have people have some type of aligned interest, AKA like money, where people are just like, hey, I'm willing to tell all of my friends this because I get 10 or 20% of the revenue. So like affiliate marketing, I think from referrals just makes the most sense in my opinion.
So say it's like a more like high ticket product and it's a little more personalized and requires onboarding and working with the client a little bit more. Would you suggest giving revenue from the clients that they refer, or would you suggest discounting from what they pay us for?
So you're giving the discount to the next customer?
Well, to the current
Like, should we give the discount to the customer that's giving us the referrals, or should we give them a portion of the amount that we're making on the customers that they refer us to?
I think that goes back to building with your customers, right? You should have that conversation with them. Like, would you rather have a... Yeah, be like, would you rather have a discount? What would incentivize you to call 10 of your friends right now? A 25% discount or 10% of the gross revenue if you close 3 or 4 people? And they'll tell you straight up, like, hey, I want the money. Like, hey, screw the discount. The discount will save me 20% on $100. But if I can get 10% of the gross revenue, I can make $1,000 this month by going out and selling a bunch of people. I think people are more aligned with making more money versus saving. If not, you wouldn't see all these people who design our clothes, but they're driving a Honda Civic that's from like 1898. So people are trying to make money versus more of like saving money. I don't think people are like really, but have that conversation with your customers. I think that's where this comes back in.
How do you go about finding the right people to work with you?
Yeah. So what he asked, how do you go about finding the right people to work with you? So we always like to say you want to manufacture serendipity. So like you want to put yourself in places where you would think that the person that you want to work with would likely be. So like in this room, like it's a Tuesday night at what, like 7:15? Yeah, 7:13, close. But like these are the people that you want to work with. Like everybody here is driven. You guys could be like watching Netflix or eating food or like hanging out at Midtown, like going and having drinks. But like you're here tonight, right now, maybe afterwards. He started laughing. But they're here right now. Like this is a great place to find somebody to work with, and just finding rooms like that to put yourself in, I think is the best way. And if not, you can manufacture those rooms. So like for us, we wanted to meet investors and we wanted to like connect with other founders. So what did we do? Nobody was doing it in the city. We started hosting our own events. We're like, hey, so if you're trying to meet devs, you should start a dev meetup. Or you want to try to meet people who could engineer your product. You should be like, hey, we have a design workshop. And we have this really big guy coming in to talk about how he designed all these different products. And then the people who show up there are likely to be people who want to build a product. And then obviously you have to, when you do find that person, even if they're qualified technically, you have to do that test in your mind, like, would I want to be stuck on a layover flight with this person, or am I willing to share a hotel room with this person? Because if both of those are no, it's like, it's going to get really bad. Because like Pablo, me and him spend like 18 hours a day together for the past like 8 years. So
Kill each other.
yeah, so if you don't love that person from the start, you're gonna hate them by the end. So like you have to like really mesh with this person. Like we finish each other's sentences all the time. Like you have to be like really love this person, because if not, like he said, like founder breakup is a real thing. So you have to be like really close to them. You have to like them. You have to appreciate them as a person, even if they're the most qualified person.
When I talk with that person, then what's your perception about having in your team family members, relatives, partners?
Yeah. So she asked, what do you think about building with family members? So I mean, I think that comes down to like a core fundamental question, like, are they qualified? Are you picking them just because they're family, or do you think like this is the best person to help me solve this problem? And then think about it also from another standpoint, like, am I willing to walk away from them? Like, if things don't go right. I think it's really hard to work with, like, a family member. But I mean, me and Pablo were best friends before we got into business together too, so it could totally work out. You know, it's just all about, like, the dynamic. I would say that's like a personal thing that you really have to evaluate yourself and be, like, objective about your own answers. Like, can I rely on this person? Are they uniquely qualified? If this didn't go right, would they understand? Like, if we separate, would our relationship be, like, in turmoil forever? And if you could say, like, yeah, like, they would hate me forever, but I'm still, like, okay to go forward, like, then do it. But if you're like, okay, I couldn't live with them hating me, like, I don't know, then maybe don't. If you have to see them at Thanksgiving, maybe not.
But then you think because you know that person's gonna be
So the people who started, we're using Canva right now. The people who started Canva are actually husband and wife. So it's like, it could work, you know, never say never. But I just said it twice. That was a bad joke. Nobody laughed. Come on.
Dad jokes.
Yeah, I'm like somebody's dad. Want another joke? I got one more. Why do developers wear glasses? Because they can't see sharp.
But they should be able to see sharp if they're developers. He's a real developer.
Yeah, I know. All right, more questions or no? Should we keep going?
It's not a stand-up comedy class, as you can tell.
Yep.
how to manage them, because one of the needs you mentioned is, okay, if you're not devoting all your time to development, then, like, you are not advancing, but then, like, you're a student, you have other roles, like, how to manage that time, energy.
Yes. So I think that's actually next week or the week after. We get into time management. So we'll definitely explain all of that and, like, what to focus on and when to focus on it. And like, to your family, like, whoever you're working with, like, they have to be as dedicated as you are, or else it's not going to work for sure. But so any more questions? If not, we'll get into pitches. All right, drum roll. All right, cool. So if you have an idea, we want to start to go into it, and each of you guys will have an opportunity to come up here and pitch. From there, if there's other people in the room that don't have an idea and they want to join you, they have that opportunity. If not, there's, like, a bunch of people who couldn't, they either had exams or they had something else who couldn't join today. We're going to also do, like, some pairing and be like, hey, this is the company, this is the person, and you have an ability to join, like, another group as well. So since I know these two guys, I'm going to make them pitch first.
Hello, everyone. My name's Corey Cumbas. I am one of the founders of CourseLinks, and so is Christian over here. Sure, you guys might have heard of CourseLinks. What we're doing is trying to replace GroupMe, specifically just at the University of Florida for now, but really we create, student-only group chats for every class at University of Florida. We're also building other study tools. Like I said, a lot of you should probably hear about it. We just launched this fall. So, we'd love any feedback, whether you love it, more feedback if you hate it. Trying to keep it short.
Yay. Cool. And by the way, guys, like, and gals, that it's not about coming in with the product. What the winner, like the top 3 people who get to pitch, it's all about the delta. So you can come in with the product and you can come in with users, but, like, how fast are you growing from that point forward? So, like, you can come in with an idea and be in the top 3 for sure. It's just, like, how fast are you moving? And those 2 weeks over break is going to give you guys an advantage because, like, it's school is out, people are not focused. Like, that's the time when you really catch up and, like, put your foot on the gas. You're up front, and I know you got something, so you're up.
Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Jarrell Felix. I'm a freshman here at the University of Florida. And when I was in my senior year of high school, I had the idea to solve the problem with drones. And the problem with drones is that they can only perform in certain conditions in which they were designed for, which makes sense, of course. But what I mean by that is if a drone is out and a gust of wind comes by, well, then it can't perform whatever it needed to do anymore. If a drone needs to go out and it needs to perform a mission that's in the air and also in the water, you can't use that drone. You have to send another system out in order to complete that mission as well. So the idea was to make drones more adaptable in terms of what they can do and how they can do it. So the current product that I'm working on right now is called Aerobian. And Aerobian is a hybrid aerial aquatic vehicle that can swim and fly. And this helps save times of mission. This helps with actually the cost of missions because you're not using as much systems anymore. You're not using as much manpower, and the mission isn't as complex. That's I don't want to go too. Is that cool? How long? How long? Okay, cool.
That was awesome.
How's everyone doing? My name's Juan Charette. This is Trevor, my partner. We founded a company called WiseWork AI, and what I've realized like over the time is my mom's a dentist, and when I would go to dinner with my parents or whatever, I would always hear them arguing about front desk problems. And I'm also in many group chats for dentists, and people are always asking for front desks, and there's a massive hole in that industry. So what we're doing is we're building AI agents that handle customer service, rescheduling, scheduling, and all of the above. So what we do is we basically reinforce front desks for dental companies to help the office managers focus on stuff that's more important and whatnot. And yeah, that's about it. There's more to it, but I'm gonna keep it short.
Good job. Short and sweet.
Okay, so I am Stephanie. I want to validate something new. I created an NGO based in Colombia 8 years ago. So I already validated my solution that is giving access to students to scholarships. I'm a Fulbright scholar here. I was an Erasmus scholar in Europe. I was a wildlife fellow in Washington, D.C., and many other fellowships, scholarships in other countries. So let's say I already hacked the system of how to get those opportunities. And I have been validating for like young adults that don't have like the skills, the knowledge. So with my NGO, we train, we guide them, and we connect them with those opportunities. But now what I want to do is to do this like for profit, like for people who can really pay for this, because I'm already doing it for free for 8 years.
Whoa,
So-
I said 30 days.
Huh?
Good job.
So yeah, I noticed that people have been asking me as a consultant to help them to apply for scholarships. So I have been developing a methodology with my team. I work at UF also as an academic success coach. So I have a caseload of more than 500 students. And I have been reading and listening carefully to their pains. So now I am connecting those pains, solve those pains, to my methodology and solution. So now what I want to do is to offer this service, not only like coach, like for them to have academic success, good grades, graduate on time, but for them having access for the scholarships of their dreams or any other projects. So it's a mix of scholarships, methodologies to get access to those opportunities, but also coaching them, because then you have the information, but you don't take action. So that's the gap I'm closing.
Thank you. Everyone's heard of MyFitnessPal, Instacart, this kind of stuff. Basically trying to make your life a little bit more convenient, right? What we want to do is we're trying to bridge the gap of having all of these different apps to make your life more convenient and putting them all in one sphere, specifically in the health region. So whether you are trying to figure out what do I need to eat, how should I exercise, what do I need to buy, all of these things should be relatively easy, relatively few taps, and that is why we have come up with what we call one-click health.
How many of you struggle with accountability? As a show of hands. Thank you for you humble individuals out there who participated. It's not often very easy. All right, perfect. It's not very easy to state that you struggle with accountability. However, I can see that you spend around, say, 18 hours a day with this man here. He seems very fit. And do you often get opportunities to be more fit? Opportunities to be more fit as a result.
Yes, I do.
So In addition, I believe that not only do we have the ability to provide all of these services in one, but we have the ability to provide a social aspect to one's fitness and one's health, to hold them more accountable with their friend structures. I notice individuals in my family very, very much love closing their Aura Rings, which is an app that was developed by Apple for the Apple Watch. And these individuals love comparing whether or not, ooh, I walked more than this person today, or ooh, my heart rate got higher than this person today. And so if we can add that level of accountability for individuals who want to get into fitness, or that level of competition for people who want to get into fitness, then we can also do that in one click help.
Amazing. Let's give it up for One Click Help.
Hi, so first I want to go ahead and go into my team before my idea, because I think at this stage, and as we're looking to see if anyone wants to join, the team is actually just as, if not more important than the idea. So me, myself, I worked at a startup last year at the University of Pennsylvania's VIPX Accelerator. So we ended up placing top 7th in their incubator and accelerator program. I was working with an MBA student as a CEO, another software engineer there. My co-founder is an engineer at Google and a computer science student also here. We're both computer science students here. And we're really all in on this whole startup thing, right? Like, I think you have to believe startup if you want to do it. You know, these numbers, like 9 out of 10 startups fail. I mean, if you're doing this like on the side, that's just not how I see it, right? So we're all in on this. And basically, we want to sort of find the intersection of new technologies and problems that need to be solved, right? I had a really big problem in the beginning, especially at this semester. I was trying to generate ideas for my own startup, right? Because I was just working on someone else's thing, and I was ended up finding more solutions without problems than problems that needed solutions, right? Until I noticed one day, like, okay, people really take pictures of their food, right? How many of you take pictures of your food? By show of hands. Basically everyone in this entire room, right? So we're developing, it's really simple. It's just an app where you take a picture of your food and you get the, what's it called? The, the nutrition of the photo you take. And it's sort of gamified dieting where it passes in this nutrition to an in-game pet, right? Kind of like a Tamagotchi or Pokemon. So it's like Pokemon Go, but instead of taking like pictures whenever you go out, sort of GPS navigation, it's just the food that you already eat. Take a picture of your food, you feed it to your in-game pet, it grows with you. That's it.
We got some health beef over here.
Okay, hello. So I had a startup when I was a freshman, and I realized too, I made a lot of mistakes. I think for any of you who are starting on your first one, best thing you can do is make mistakes. A lot of the mistakes are like group mistakes, stupid mistakes. I made the dumbest mistakes. But I think now it's helped me kind of realize what helped me figure out what's a good solution, how to look for problems. And a big problem that I came in as a PACE student, and I think it's my first year here. I'm a senior though, but it's because I elongated my PACE stay so I could travel last year. And basically, what I figured out was as a PACE student, so many PACE students now, there's so many online students all over the US, all over the world. And we are kind of in a loneliness epidemic to the point where so many people are finding it so hard to make friends, especially if you're an online student. Sorry, I hate public speaking if I'm like shaking. But basically, I realized that it was so hard for me to try and reach out to people. Like, I would tell people, yeah, I go to UF, I was living in Miami. And they would tell me, oh, do you know this person? Or, oh, have you seen this place? Or like, who have you met? And I'm like, nobody, because I wanted to stay in Miami, but I was just not meeting the people. I wanted to make friends. And it was just so hard, especially with social media, seeing so many people seem like they have so many friends and you're just kind of stuck at home doing online schooling. And I realized with the other people who I had in class that a lot of them weren't in Gainesville. Some people come to Gainesville. Most people actually just stay where they are. They just do UF online from where they're from. And I decided, apart from the fact that I was not making a lot of friends, I'm like, I want to make friends abroad. So I went last year, and I went backpacking throughout Europe. And I met some other people throughout my time in PACE who had done the same thing alone. Some of them just wanted to do it, but they just never found someone to do it with. And I realized, thank God, I had a cousin to go do it with. And I realized that I don't have the resources to be making so many friends since I'm online, but I like to travel. There's so many people who want to travel. There's this new thing called the 1/4 life crisis, where you just want to like either travel or run a marathon or start a company, anything. And I realized that there was this problem between connecting online students as well as kind of what we see that people want to go abroad. Like this is the moment in life when people want to go abroad. I'm sorry, I'm making this long. And basically what I'm working on right now is a project in which I'm going to, the idea is to unify online students who want to go abroad and get them to go into groups to multi-city trips, the same way that I went backpacking, instead of going to just one place. And I'm finding the way to make it how in UF it's a requirement for you to either intern somewhere or go abroad to qualify for it to be in that part of the requirement, and either make it into a business where it can help you get internships, or it can even be the requirement in itself. But yeah, I'm doing it alone. It's kind of an idea I've had for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's changing really fast. But yeah, if anyone is interested in traveling or was a PACE student, then let me know. Thank you.
How's it going, everybody? So my name is Javi, and I'm very new to this, so I've never done anything like this, but I have this idea, and I'm obsessed with this concept of bettering yourself. And looking around this room, I can tell that everybody here likes bettering themselves, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't. So my thought and idea is very new, very fresh, just like hers, and within the last couple weeks, and it's the concept of connecting people who are trying to better themselves. I've found in my journey that it's very hard to find other people walking the same path as you, especially in certain environments. So I wanted to create an app that gives you the ability to go on this app and discover different areas of life where people can just go and talk about what you're trying to do, and like whether it be music or whether it be working out or whether it be running or just anything, surfing, hiking, all that stuff. Just so you can connect with other people who are also on this path where, like you said, it's very lonely sometimes. So it makes it easier for you to find people to go on this path with. So that's kind of the idea. It's very fresh. If anybody can give some input, I'd love to hear it. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Hello. I guess I'll talk about my team as well. I know someone else in here did. You. But yeah, I met my co-founder actually 2 years ago in Gainesville Tech Week, and we hit it off like right away. Like it was so like easy to talk to her, and I met her like a few more times like after that. And so we were trying to find like some common ground, because obviously I think she was a really good person to start a startup with, because we were both into that. So we kind of were like, okay, we're both into tech. She's in Fire Neural Network, like a Gainesville startup right now. And then I worked at Azure OpenAI this summer. So AI is definitely in the sector where we should do something. And then we were both teaching assistants. So I TA'd for data structures, and then she TA'd for like a statistics course. And we were like, what are some problems that we face in that? Obviously grading. Not just me and my former TAs and her experience, but lots of TAs spend most of their time grading and less time with students. And that's also pretty discouraging for people that want to be professors, and it just kind of ruins the experience for everyone. We also talked to some teachers. They have more TA positions to delegate grading tasks to them, which sucks. So we thought to make an AI grading tool to make that process faster and take out all those like tedious tasks, so that teachers can focus on like the things that actually matter, their students, their curriculum. The initial target is like TAs and like college professors. just because we have access to them, but we found that K through 12 teachers face this problem much more strongly because not only they have to work 9 to 5, in addition to that, they have to grade, they have to make all these lesson plans. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Layla Karimova. I'm a third year here at University of Florida studying industrial and systems engineering. So I'm actually has been active in the startup ecosystem here in Gainesville since my freshman year. So I do have a lot of like resources and experience in participating in startup competitions. But this semester I decided to take on a new challenge and start like a idea completely from scratch. It's called Retamp. Something that we're trying to do is to create a training platform for the restaurant industry. So whenever the restaurant hires new employees, they have a constant and an easy way for employees to train, since the restaurant industry faces the highest turnover rates of 87%, which is 40% higher than the average on other industries. So that's what I'm working on. I kind of tend to have more of the business background. So if someone has a lot of developing experience or can recommend someone who's good with website or coding, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, how's it going? My name is Max Tierman. So basically, my idea is called Launchmates. So everyone here has been talking about, how do you find the perfect business partner to work with? How do you know if your idea is good or not? Because I think all of us have probably gone down this rabbit hole at least once where every week you're thinking of like a new idea. You're like, oh yeah, this is the idea I'm going to go with. This is great. And then the next week you're like, what the hell was I thinking last week? This is never going to work. And I've been doing that a lot because I guess like you guys, you started because you guys are like best friends. You both had the same like ambition to start a startup. But I also have a pretty small friend group, but my best friend has no interest in doing anything like startups. So I'm like, all right, I have all these ideas, but I have no one to bounce it off of. I don't know if it's good or not. And I don't really go to a bunch of social events to try and build connections with people that also want to pursue a startup. So Launchmates would basically just be an online social platform for you to build connections with like aspiring entrepreneurs that don't really have that like experience or like they don't know exactly what they want to do in like the startup field, but they know that's like they have the passion for it and they have the drive to think about ideas, collaborate with other people, and make it work. Because there are some other platforms out there that do like similar things. Like there's something called Co-Founders Lab, which was actually just founded off of the basis of like kind of something like this, where you find other people who have ideas and you meet people that also want to do startups. But their platform, like I go on there and I'm getting recommendations from full stack developers that have 10 years of experience and they worked for startups for several years. And it's like, oh, how am I going to work with these people? Like we can't even relate. So that's why I just want to make a online social platform dedicated to like for aspiring entrepreneurs to build connections and like present ideas and get feedback.
All right. So our idea is for a type of Duolingo app where instead of for learning languages, it is to do treat speech therapy for speech impediments for children. So it would be like you make an account and you go in and you would have courses just like Duolingo for like a set language. But in this case, it would be specific areas of difficulty in, well, we'll start with speech therapy. And it would be tailored courses for children to be able to go through the courses and get encouragement and maybe play games as a kind of like educational entertainment for children. One of the problems is that kids spend a lot of time on the phones. They're playing like, I don't know what kids play nowadays. Let's say like Angry Birds. It's like old. But, they're just on like social media or like YouTube. And it's a big waste of time and it's like just total rot on kids' brains. So I think there's a real, need for, this is a kind of a niche example of that, but a need for parents to, feed their children's attention spans with something that's more beneficial, especially in the case of, special needs children who tend to, could use that time to treat some of the, maybe they're already paying for therapy. It's more beneficial than, spending their time on like watching YouTube shorts and kind of like getting brain rot from that kind of content. Did you want to add to that?
We're still, that's loud. Okay, we're still working out like the details, but I also have this other idea that we're gonna like work in unison with to make it a little bit more interactive. I'm calling it Animite, and what it is a generative AI model where you can sit in front of a camera and act out how you want this virtual character to like its mannerisms and all that when it's responding with like text to speech or however. So yeah, you can like sit in front of a camera and have it like act out very dramatic, or it can be very serious, however you want it to be really. You train the model to be that way, and then you give it a text response or a text, and it'll generate the proper animation response for that text. But yeah, we're probably going to plug that into this system, and that can also be its own standalone idea as well that game studios or the film industry can also use as well. But yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So there's nothing much yet, but an idea I had was based on healthcare, specifically in the maternity ward. So in maternal deaths, they tend to be very high, and I've noticed it tends to be extremely high for women of color, and they tend to have 3 times more likely deaths. And they've made laws to try to address this, but it never focused on the bias, and it continued to happen, and they continued to die. And I continued to hear people speaking about how they kept facing it, how their pain wasn't addressed, how nothing was taken seriously. And then recently, Serena Williams, who is one of the biggest athletes, had to essentially crawl out of a hospital bed during labor because no one was taking her concerns seriously. And that honestly terrified me, because to think that in the future, if I'm just a regular person and nobody really knows me, they wouldn't take me seriously, it's kind of terrifying to know they didn't do it for somebody that big. So I decided I would think of creating perhaps an app that kind of tracks this issue to look at these biases. And it could happen for like any type of women as well, regardless of background, but also having a part that focuses on background and those biases, because it won't get solved if we don't do that. So by creating that, we can track certain hospitals if they have a better adjustment in terms of care, if they addressed certain issues better than others. And then this could kind of guide people towards going towards those places rather than others, because it is one of the most vulnerable times for women. So that's why I decided to focus on that. So that's kind of my pitch.
Good job. You did better than you thought you would.
Hi everyone, my name is Shashank and I'm a graduate student in computer science. And the idea that I'm currently working on is called Dripsy, which is basically like booking.com for apartment search, Tinder for roommates, and Eventbrite for the community events happening around. So I have also developed an MVP landing page. It's live on tripzy.com, tribzy.com. You can check it out and give feedback. Thank you.
Good job. Cool. So I'll just do like a random pitch, just because I feel like it's always like cool to like watch somebody else pitch. And like the structure, I think, is something that we'll go over another week that will like help teach you guys. Like literally, I just came up with this, like I promised, like 10 minutes ago. I have no idea how it's gonna go. But also, aside from that, we're gonna do office hours every Tuesday before class at Malachowski Hall. And we'll send a follow-up email too. So if any of you people, like any of you guys want to just like come stop by and like get 10 minutes or just like ask about the business, get one-on-one advice, like that's what we're here for. Cool.
Tuesdays, 2:30 p.m. at Spark Studio in Malachowski Hall.
Yeah, and we'll send out a follow-up email. So, 6 million people get into car accidents a year in the United States alone. Imagine you're driving down 75. You're with your wife and kids. It's pouring rain. You can't see in front of you, but you see taillights. You have nowhere to pull over. What do you do next? Now imagine a future where you could take the sensors of your cars and your new windshield and have a heads-up display and an augmented reality view of what's happening in front of you without the weather storm. What we're building today is the future of transportation. We're building a heads-up display in the future of windshield technology by leveraging already existing tech and the best engineers in the world, i.e. you guys, I need some of you guys to join me, to drastically transform the way that we drive today. We're gonna lower traffic-related accidents, weather-related traffic accidents by up to 35%. And the best thing is that it costs 90% of the existing cost structure, 10% cheaper than what they're already selling the windshields at today. We already have letters of intent with Toyota, General Motors, and Ford, and we're looking to scale. So sharks, I just need $600,000 for 10% of my company, and I need 2 of you engineers to join us today. Who's in? Sold. Boom, I got 1 guy. Anybody else? All right, cool, I got 2 people. Cool. So that's about it for the pitches. I just wanted to kind of do that. I think it's kind of fun. I do it like every time, just like pitch like a random idea that I come up with while I'm here. But it's not easy to come up here. So like give a round of applause for yourselves because like all you guys came up here and pitched. It's nerve-wracking, right? Like if it's your first time, for sure. So we're running out of time, so like I don't want to do this today, but like we'll email everybody. You guys could like talk after. But if any of you guys heard somebody that sounded like they were working on something interesting, like you two should match up, we're going to make an email list. We're going to make a spreadsheet. Everybody could learn more about like what the other companies are. We want to help you all like form teams if you don't have a team yet. And we'll try and plug you in with some other people on campus too. If you guys like need engineers, or you guys need like, you know, people in marketing or whatever, just let us like know how we can help you guys succeed. And then last but not least, this Friday from 9:30 to 5:30 p.m., we're hosting the Gainesville Innovation Summit. Yeah, at Wrights Union at the Ryan Ballroom. So if you guys want, we have a code so you guys can all get free tickets to the summit. It's literally the number 161 friend, and we'll send that in the email as well. But we have the founder and CEO of ReliaQuest, $1 billion cybersecurity company. We have Manny Medina. He had a $2.3 billion exit to Verizon Wireless. We have the founder of Infotech, which they recently sold. I know it's for 9 figures. But we have a lot of really good speakers. We have somebody from Mark Cuban's family office. He does all the Shark Tank deals. We'll have like a lot of really interesting speakers. We'll have food. We'll have lunch. We'll have networking opportunities. So any of you guys who want to come, just like we'll send an email. But also look up Gainesville Innovation Summit. The code is 161FRIEND. And just let us know however we can support you guys on this journey. So that's pretty much it for today.